Today's date is January 31st, 2015, and we're honored to have Marvin Sue from Evansville, Indiana, to talk to us today about World War II. He was drafted on July 13th, 1945, and we want to hear about some of his experiences in World War II. Marvin, we'd like you to tell us where you were born, grade school, high school, and then what your thoughts about World War II before you enlisted or were drafted in 1945. Why don't you tell us a few things about that?
I was born in Evansville, Indiana in the year 1927 on Missouri Street right off of Elsa's. And we finally moved over on Elliott Street between Maryland and Columbia. And I started to Delaware School through kindergarten, and that's at the first and second grade. Third and fourth grade, I went to Baker School, and then in the fifth grade, I became a Catholic, and I started to St. Joe. I went to St. Joe School in Evansville through my 8th grade class, graduated, and then I went to Central. That was in 41, and I went to Central for 2 years, then Mechanic Arts for a year and a half. I graduated out of high school in 3.5 years. And I got out in December, and I turned 18 in May of 41, and
or 45.
I'm sorry, 45, and I graduated, and then after graduation, I fell in love in my junior year with my wife, and we got married in June the 27th of 45.
What's her name?
Her maiden name was Beverly Faye Moore. And then in June of 45, I took my physical. July the 13th of 45, I was inducted into the Army. I went to...
How did you get drafted? Tell us, did you get a letter in the mail, or you didn't enlist, you were drafted?
I had a letter from my friends and neighbors, and it told me that I was drafted. So I went to, after I took my physical, they asked me what I would like to have, the Army or the Navy, and I said Navy. They said Army. Okay. Well, I went to the Army, and we were shipped to Camp Joseph T. Robinson in North Little Rock, Arkansas. And I took my basic training there, and that was 17 weeks of basic training. After that, I got a relief of 1 week. I came home, spent the week, and then I ended up in New Jersey at Fort Dix, and shipped out of the United States in the December of 45, and we was on the ocean, Atlantic Ocean, for 13 days. We went through the English Channel and into the North Sea and to Bremerhaven, Germany. And when we got into Bremerhaven, we got disembarked, and they shipped me to Marburg, Germany. And we went on train with wooden seats, no heat, no windows, and they stuck cardboard in the windows, and we built fires inside the train to keep warm. But anyhow, we got to Marburg, and I spent 3 weeks in Marburg. Then all at once my orders came, and I was shipped to Berlin, Germany, and I was in the the 78th Infantry Division in Love Company, and I went into there and started pulling guard duty. So I pulled guard duty in the Anhalter Bahnhof, which is a railroad station, and then I also pulled guard duty on, we were guarding Nazi prisoners out in the woods, snow about a foot deep on the ground, and I had 5 Nazis that I had to guard. And so they were out there cutting wood so we could burn it. But anyhow, after that, then I got into the supply room, and that was my code then, was supply. So then after that lasted about 2 or 3 months. I went to the hospital with an eye infection, and I spent a week in the hospital with the eye infection. So in my pictures that they taken of me, I got sunglasses on, but it wasn't from being Hollywood style, but it was just because I had an eye problem. But after that, then I was transferred. They was breaking up the 78th Infantry Division, so they transferred me to the 16th Constabulary in Berlin, and we were the guards of the United States district, and we actually were the police force, and we ran patrols in the city, 2 men in a Jeep, and I become a duty driver, and I was kind of bumped around. They made me armistice for the unit, and my lieutenant didn't like the job I was doing, so he told me, he says, you have a PFC rating. He said, I could bust you because our company failed our inspection, our arms inspection. Well, I didn't say anything to him. He asked me if I had any excuse, and you got 3 answers in the Army. Yes, sir, no, sir, and no excuse, sir. So I just said, no, sir. So I went back to the company, and then I finally got bumped around. I was mail clerk, I was in the supply room, but anyhow, we got to go on a United Olympics there in Berlin, and it was in the stadium where Hitler was making his speeches, and everybody howling Sieg Heil and all the banners and all that. Well, this was the same grounds that was in, but then we had to run patrols on the highway at night, and we run halfway to Helmstedt, and then we would meet another patrol coming from Helmstedt. Then we'd turn around and come back to Berlin. And it was cold out there in the Jeep riding, and it was kind of miserable. But anyhow, I endured that. And from the last of my stay I was in supply, and I didn't have to pull any guard duty after that. So then in December of '45, they transferred me out. I had no place to sleep that night. Me and 2 other guys, we went to the American Red Cross, and we slept on their couches that night. Then after that, we were shipped to Bremerhaven. We left Bremerhaven in late December of '45, and got on the ship, the U.S. Lewiston Victory, and we came into the New York Harbor and got off the ship, we got on a train immediately. Then we went to Camp Fort Sheridan in Chicago, and I was discharged on January the 2nd of 1947. So that is my history of my military. I was on the train coming home, and one guy more or less insulted me, but I let it ride, and we got no welcome at all, or I got no welcome at all from anybody on the way back. So, but I did serve my country.
The pizzazz of the war was over after 45, so by 47 you didn't get the notoriety that they did in 45.
Right.
Now, a couple of questions about things here, Marvin. Back in 45, when you enlisted or when you were drafted in the summer of 45. What were your thoughts at that time? Because we'd won the war in Germany, but we hadn't won it in Japan yet. And if we hadn't, the Japanese, we dropped the bomb August 6th and August 8th or 9th, and Japan surrendered. But if they would not have surrendered, your history would have been different. You would probably been in the army in Japan, and they say we'd have lost 500,000 troops.
Yes.
What were your thoughts about the possibility of you not returning, and did you have any fear of war at that time?
Well, you always have the fear of war, but I was on the mortar field. We were shooting mortars when we heard about the war ending, and that was down in Little Rock. And when you're in the service, you go, you don't have time to worry about things like that. You got to go do your duty.
Now, from 1941 to 45, you were at Central High School, then Mechanical Arts. What were your worries about that at that time, about the war, and did you think we were going to beat the Germans and the Japanese and the Italians?
Well, when I was in high school, I didn't worry about the war so much because I was a 125-pound weakling, and I thought, they'll never take me. But Uncle Sam wanted me pretty bad, so I went in. I had a 28-inch waist, and but I did everything in the Army that was asked of me.
Now, over there where you lived near St. Joe Church on Elliott Street and things like that. There was a large factory near there named Chrysler, and Chrysler made 96% of the bullets in World War II. They made 3 billion bullets. They also refurbished tanks and made a lot of incendiary bombs. As a kid, you probably weren't allowed on their property, and also we had an LST factory and we had a P-47 factory. Did you remember experience of any of those 3 big factories in town?
Well, I sat there in Mechanic Arts looking out the windows, and I could look over there and see them running the tanks around. They were testing the tanks at Chrysler, and they had a complex set up there where they could run those tanks around those bank curves and not have to take their foot off the gas. And I did that, and when I was a junior in high school, on vacation, I worked at George Cook & Son on Plant 2 out on the Upper Mount Vernon Road, and I was using a settling torch cutting metal, and we were making the hatchways for the LSTs. So I did that, and they'd drop those big hunks of steel on the floor, no air protection at all, anything, and I like to lost my hearing during that summer, but they reported to me when I went back to school that my hearing had gotten really bad. So, but that was pretty much my extent of my schooling.
Back to your Mechanical Arts, you're talking about the tanks. We refurbished Sherman tanks. We did not make Sherman tanks at the Chrysler plant, but we refurbished the Grousers, and they would use them in practice and training, and they also used them in Europe, and they'd bring them back, and we would repair them there. So you would, that track is in a lot of old photographs. It's probably a quarter mile or half a mile in circumference, and they refurbished these grousers and tanks and everything. And so you got to watch those tanks going in a circle. I bet that was amazing to see that.
Yeah, well, see the field in between there, the school and that track. That's where we got out and we had a obstacle course we had to run. We did exercise like we would been doing in the Army. And so we had spent, and that was the place where old Ponderella used to be. We used to go skinny dipping there. But if you go to the Donut Bank, you're on that track right there. And then going down Kentucky Avenue, where Kentucky Avenue, you pass Diamond, you go south of Diamond, well then you're on the track there.
So the track, we have an old North High School. It was built in '57, and it was closed about 2007 or so, or 10. But it would be east of North High School, that track, and it would stretch all the way down to where our new Donut Bank is, and where Ponderosa Steakhouse was, or Bonanza.
Yeah.
But that was a large track there that they refurbished things. Did you ever see, and they had made incendiary bombs, some of them there, and they also made some of the bullets there. You never were able to get in the plant to see that, though.
No, I didn't. No.
Did the tanks look like they were going fast?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Were they very noisy?
Well, let's see, that was almost 2 or 3 blocks away, so sound didn't affect us too much. You could hear them, but it was not a loud sound.
Our car weighs about 4,000 or 5,000 pounds. Those weighed up to 70,000 pounds. Did it shake the earth when they were going around? You didn't feel that?
No, that track they had, I don't know how deep that concrete is, but we felt no vibrations.
Catty corner where you were was Diamond Mines, right at Diamond and Stringtown. Do you remember the mines there? There's old coal mines that were...
No, I don't remember that, no.
Back to the George C. Cook factory where you made the parts for the LST. George C. Cook also made all the ventilation for the LST. LST had up to 15 Sherman tanks in the bottom of it. When they turn everything on, you'd get asphyxiated. So George Cook and Sons made the ventilation for that, but also I guess they made some of the covers for the LST as well. How heavy were those covers? 100 pounds?
I don't know. Actually, what the part I was cutting was the lids. And they was about the size of a casket. And when you would have a torch and you burn a hole through, or you get the metal heated up and you pull the trigger to shoot the air in, that would blow a hole through that metal, and all that molten metal would come down and get in your shoes, and you'd have to take a shoe off pretty quick. But we had no protective. About the only thing we had was a pair of gloves. Yes, we had goggles and a pair of gloves, and that was about all we had.
Yes.
I was probably running tennis shoes and street shoes.
You were a junior in high school when you did that.
Yes, I had to ride my bicycle from North Main Street, Louisiana and Maine, all the way out to Mount Vernon Road and climb that hills, work 9-10 hours a day, and then ride back again.
How much you get paid?
I don't even remember, to tell you the truth. It was probably good money at that time, but...
When we got our LST here in Evansville, the only one left out of 1,100 in the world. We have one left in Evansville. Got it in 2005. It's been here 10 years now, and we have another 5-year contract. How nostalgic was that when you made one of those lids on that one and about 167 other ones that were made in Evansville? Was that nostalgic when we got the LST in Evansville?
Well, that almost made me cry.
Yeah, you were part of that. Yeah, we're trying to keep that museum going and hopefully be part of it, but no, it's a big effect. My father was on the LST for 4 years, not that one, but another one. Now we're trying to get a Republic Air Museum here to memorialize the P-47s. There's only 8 now that are flying in the world. There's 2 that flew around here last summer, but hopefully we can get that to memorialize what Evansville did in World War II. You grew up during that time, and you didn't probably realize at the time, but it was a heck of a factory for the World War II effort. And you probably, in retrospect, realize how busy a place it was. But at the time, as a kid, it's hard to realize how significant we were in World War II.
Well, I realized that, and everybody was patriotic back then. We gathered all the metal up that we could find, the rubber and all that. So, I mean, that was just everyday life.
What advice do you have for the next generation, and to tell them about the importance of World War II and how important our freedom is for the next 200 or 300 years?
Well, I feel it's very important to keep our country free, and I hate to see this ISIC situation coming up, but we'll never defeat them with just air troops. They keep saying we won't take American troops back, but we'll never do it. And them people over there have been fighting for centuries, and they're going to fight regardless. I don't know what the situation is going to be.
Well, appreciate your time, Marvin Sue, and appreciate your generation and all the efforts you made for World War II, and thanks for helping us with our freedom.
Well, thank you, Mark.